We discuss this further with economist Owen Nkomo, who's Chief Executive Officer of Wealth Group Inkunzi. A very good evening to you, Owen. Thank you so much for speaking to us. Now, let's start with this. Economic growth slowing last year to an estimated 2%. It's expected to continue to lower in 2023 to just about 1.7%, I believe. So what kind of a position does this put the Finance Minister?
Hi, SABC. I'm speaking to you in the dark here, given the Eskom load shedding. And I think that the number you're talking about, the necessity to reduce the projections on the growth of our economy, came through majorly because of Eskom. So Minister Godongwana, obviously, I think he's got ambitions to try and do whatever he can to grow the economy, but I think that there's just so many problems that I really have to deal with if he's to make any meaningful impact in terms of growing the economy. The first challenge being Eskom, obviously. It just gets bleaker and bleaker and bleaker by the days when it comes to dealing with Eskom. We're now on stage 5 to stage 6. I believe that if we don't solve this problem, there can be no glory in trying to turn the wheels of our economy around, because definitely we're heavily reliant on consistent supply of electricity for most of the industries that drive the bottom line of our growth.
Do you also share the concern that elevated levels of price inflation will be something to look at, particularly given the from a supply chain perspective?
Yeah, definitely. The increase in prices is going to be around for a while, as long as we're dealing with Eskom. The cost of energy will continue to increase. If you're a business, you having to put additional budget to making sure that you got generators and these inverters for added length of electricity supply is back up to Eskom, and that is a big problem. And I think food prices also have continued to go up, and so too has oil prices, fuel prices have going up this week they've gone up rather by a small margin, but relative to where we were 2 years ago, we have seen quite big increases in the cost of fuel. And all of these things drive inflation up. And unfortunately, there's not much that the minister can do about those things, because some of them are, with the exception of Eskom, are exogenous elements, particularly if you look at the weakening currency. It's definitely coming from outside selling, but the perception, I must say that the perception has weakened in this current week, given the continued Eskom challenges that we have. So the weak currency will import inflation, in my view, when it comes to us buying all this stuff that we buy from outside the country, particularly fuel.
From the perspective of the fiscal person, what's in it and how to divvy things up? One of the outcomes post-COVID was a sharp recovery in commodity prices. My colleague Nompumelelo spoke about that, and this resulted in much higher than expected mining tax revenue for the country. Is this something that's likely to continue playing out this year, or have the fortunes changed?
No, look, I think we were lucky last year to have been in the right cycle in terms of mining, where mining companies did extremely well with the recovery post-COVID there, and the revenue collector did very well, in terms of us exceeding our targets through collecting excess cash from the mining industry. I'm not sure if this is going to be repeated this year around, but hopefully, if there is a decline, it's not going to be a very, very big decline. I do think that mining companies were very active still last year. Problem again being this issue of Eskom. But luckily, some of these mines are moving to starting to supply their own energy. And I think, so in my humble view, Eskom remains the biggest Achilles tendon to us achieving a bigger economy. And if the economy grows, then we will be able to collect more tax, which we will then hopefully use for the right things in our allocation. And hopefully Minister Godongwana has got a few aces up his sleeve in terms of how he's going to navigate this budget this time around, because I think the environment is extremely tough. I think that there is just far much more money that is required to get the country going and to sort out this electricity supply challenge. And at the same time, we live in an environment where unemployment is getting worse and worse by the day. So you would expect that the social focus or the focus on social upliftment, social grants and things like that, you will expect that he will probably increase that allocation as well, which unfortunately, as much as it is very needed, is not going to drive the growth of the economy necessarily.
I will come back to employment in just a moment, and I just want to continue looking at the tax brackets and room for change. So we've seen that changes in corporate and value-added tax is something that some pundits say the tax rates there seem unlikely just in terms of raising them, but that there could be a modicum of personal income tax relief. What are your views about this, the adjustment of the respective tax brackets?
Look, I think it would be the right thing to increase, to widen the tax brackets like you've done in the past. That has allowed people to retain a little bit more cash in their pockets. But when it comes to corporate tax, I don't think that there's going to be any. At least this is what I think. I don't think it's going to give us another reduction in the corporate tax rate. Most probably it might wait until next year. But if it does, it definitely will be a welcome reprieve for corporates that are having to fork out more money to cover stuff that the state should have been taking care of, a stable electricity supply system. So if it does give a reprieve to corporates, I think that would be great. And in fact, I do hope that it does. But in the past, we have seen that when it takes a lot, or rather it takes longer for the government or the Ministry of Finance to actually be lenient with corporates in the country in terms of reducing the tax rates.
Owen, I mean, we've been talking about the NHI for, I think it's close to a decade now, if not more or less, but I'm just wondering the likelihood of the NHI being a focal point in the 2023 budget, because the goal of strengthening health systems has been something that the globe has been talking about, particularly since COVID. What are your thoughts on this?
Look, I think the NHI, I've had experience that says NHI is extremely important. If we could get a solution like that to benefit the majority of South Africans, relative, for example, to spending money on the road accident fund, I think it would be a very clever move by the government to do. But unfortunately, we know how government works. They've taken so many years to approve NHI. They would take even more years to implement it. And by the time they start implementing, maybe 30% of the budget will be gone to expenses that are not related to actually implementing. So I don't think actually at this stage the government has capacity in terms of implementing and capacity in terms of funds to actually get NHI going. If anything, probably it will be mentioned in the speech because next year is election year. There's a few things that are obviously going to hinge on next year being an election year, and I think that there might be references to some things that will be seen by the populace, the voting populace, as being a positive by the people that are going to vote. Things like the 350 Rand grant, which the minister recently said it will be very difficult to pull back this 350. I do think they're going to extend its tenure. But for NHI, I really think that you and I will have to live to see this when it happens. I'm just worried about the government implementing big projects because the government has not done itself any favors by implementing effectively.
Owen, thank you so much for speaking to us. It's a pity we have run out of time because I did want us to talk about employment, particularly the recovery we saw in the latter part of the year, and of course the linkage between climate and social challenges.